Okay, welcome. My name is Dr. Spencer Erickson, and this is the Life Without Fear podcast. And today we're talking about another pregnancy issue, which is SPD, symphysis pubis dysfunction, or pubic symphysis pain. This is really common in a lot of pregnancies. I probably see women come in probably about a fifth or a sixth of the time they come in, they have some pubic bone pain. And so it's really, pardon me, it's really helpful to get that adjusted. A lot of women, I have stories of women coming in who've lived with it for months, and they come in and one adjustment and it's just gone. And in absolute tears when they walk into my office, and I just adjust the bone, and it's just gone. Now that's not always the case. I can think of one case in particular where it was particularly stubborn. It really didn't want to move. But generally speaking, getting the pubic symphysis adjusted or the pubic bone adjusted makes a huge difference. Now I was doing some research on this, and believe it or not, most medical websites and pregnancy websites don't even mention chiropractic as far as a treatment or a protocol for helping with pubic symphysis pain, or SPD. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to walk you through what the pubic symphysis actually is, how it works, and how we can really help it a lot. So we're going to get going on this now. What is the pubic bone, or the pubic symphysis? Now we have this bone that comes together in the front of the pelvis. Of course, in the back, you have the sacroiliac joints. They're big, long joints. And the pelvis comes around to the front. And in fact, I've got a spine here. I'll just show you. Now, so this is the back of the pelvis. Now you can see in here, we have great big long joints called the sacroiliac joints. They're like 3 inches long. They're huge joints, left side and right side. Now, the reason that we have joints in the pelvis is because the pelvis is supposed to be able to move with us. It walks with us when we walk. And it has to have a lot of integrity. It's got to have everything kind of just right in there for it to work properly, especially for our whole lives. And what we have to remember is that if we have two big strong joints in the back, these big 3-inch long joints with tons of ligaments, a lot of support for those. The front, look at that, it's like an inch. It's like an inch or inch and a quarter, and it doesn't have nearly as much support. And so it needs to be really, really strong. And so I'm going to talk about the anatomy of this in just a second. But we have to have a really strong support system for the pelvis, because it holds up our entire structure. If you look, we've got here are the hip joints, the ball and socket. This is the socket for the hip joint on one side and then the other side. And the weight for the body has to be supported basically by these little sockets. They hold everything up when we're standing. And so if we have this mobility in the pelvis, well, then it's got to be really strong, because all of that weight is coming down straight through the center, and then it's transferring to the sides here. So this hip is holding up all the weight, and this hip is holding up all the weight. And so the pelvis is really, really well designed to do just that. Now, the bones in the pelvis are really interesting. We actually have 3 bones that form when we're still growing, kind of in utero, and then as we're growing up. There are 3 separate pelvic bones on each side, and then they turn into basically 1 on each side. But we have, the first is the ilium. Here, that's the top of the hip bone, where you put your hands on your hips. That's the ilium. And then we have the ischium back here. This is the bone that you sit on. So the ilium, and then ischium, and then this is called the pubis, or the pubic bone. We think of the pubic bone as being the bone that goes straight across, but actually it's 2 halves of the pubic symphysis. And so we've got these little bones here that come across, and they form this pubic symphysis here. Now, what is a symphysis? Well, basically it's a joint. We have lots of different joints in our bodies. Obviously, the easy ones to access are our knuckles, right? Now, our knuckles are called synovial joints. The reason for that is because they have a joint capsule, they have cartilage on the inside, and then they're full of fluid. It's called synovial fluid. And that fluid lubricates the joints, and the capsule kind of keeps everything contained. It's really, really a cool system. It's really well designed. But if I take that system, if I take the joint itself and I apply the right pressures to it, it'll actually pop. And that's how we get the chiropractic adjustment a lot of times. Of course, my knuckles are really loose because I pop them and crack them all the time. But synovial joints have a tendency to do that. because you have an enclosed system full of fluid. You put the right pressure on it and give it a little push, and it'll give us that release. That cavitation is what that is, which people call cracking or popping the joints. And so this most of the joints, like 98% of the joints in the body, maybe even way more than that, are synovial joints, where they're built exactly the same way. We have the spinal joints are all that way. All the joints in the so in the neck and in the lower back and even the sacroiliac joints are big, long synovial joints. They're probably, well, and then the hip joints, they're probably the largest synovial joints. Shoulders, elbows, all this stuff is synovial. Now, the other kind of joint that we have in the body is called a fibrocartilaginous joint. Now, fibrocartilage or fibrocartilaginous joints basically they're held together by cartilage and really, really strong fibers. And so the AC joint, or the acromioclavicular joint, is a fibrocartilaginous joint. We also have some fibrocartilaginous joints in the sternum where the ribs attach in the front. But this here is a fibrocartilaginous joint. Now, can you see right in between the bones there is a disc, and this is really an interesting disc. This is called fibrocartilage. And so the purpose for this disc, this is where everything anchors to. We have a lot of stuff that anchors here from the top and from the bottom. We have some of the adductor muscles, or some, when you pull a groin, the muscle on the inside of the thigh, those are adductor muscles, and some of those anchor right into that disc. The abdominal muscles actually anchor into the disc, not onto the bones necessarily, but into the disc. And then we have all these ligaments that come and they attach here, and that's what keeps everything really stable. Okay, so the problem with this is it's not very much joint in the front. We have 6 inches of joints in the back. We have 3 on this side and 3 on this side, really, really strong, well-supported joints. All of that same force is being transferred into the front of the pelvis through one little tiny 1.5-inch joint. And so it has to be extremely strong, and so fibrocartilaginous joint is much better suited for that kind of strength and with that small size. The problem with that, though, is that fibrocartilaginous joints are more susceptible to stretching, and they don't heal real well when they get injured, and so especially in pregnancy. So that's what we're going to talk about next. If we have a joint that's dysfunctioning, generally speaking, I can go in and we can adjust it, and it takes a lot of the pressure off. I call it resetting the joint, because it kind of puts everything back into normal positioning and stimulates the nervous system. We get a chemical reaction from it, endorphin burst, and all that kind of stuff. A lot of things happen during a chiropractic adjustment of a synovial joint. A lot of people don't realize that the pubic symphysis joint is a joint. They kind of think of it just as this solid blocked thing that doesn't really move, but it really actually moves quite a bit. And so during pregnancy, what happens is we get something called relaxin. And, well, not we, women who are pregnant get something called relaxin. It's a hormone that gets released into the body, and it allows, or it prompts all of the ligaments in the body to start to become really flexible and stretchy and more loose. And so if you have a joint like that pubic symphysis joint that is all ligaments, pardon me, it's stabilized all by ligaments, and it starts to pull apart and get really loose and sloppy, well, then it has a tendency in some women to become really irritated. Pardon me. When that gets really irritated, it creates pain and inflammation. Now, only when you're using your pelvis, right? When do you use your pelvis? Basically for everything. So women that have SPD generally have painful almost everything. Lifting is painful, walking is painful, especially going up and down stairs is painful, and for some reason, especially sleeping, like rolling over in bed at night is like torture for these women. And so it's really good to be able to help them. So one of the main takeaways from this is that in some women, it just becomes a huge issue. Most of the time, it starts in the second trimester of pregnancy. It can happen earlier. I've had women come in like 16 weeks, even 12 weeks, and they say their pubic bone's already giving them problems. In a first pregnancy, they've never had pain there before. And so as the body starts adapting, especially if we have pre-existing stressors in the system, we go in, the pregnancy starts and everything just starts to change a little bit, and the body's like, oh man, I don't love this. And it starts to get irritated and inflamed, and then we start to have pubic bone pain. Pardon me. So a lot of times with those women, we just start working immediately on that. And usually we're able to get ahead of it really quick. And so it's not something we have to be super consistent on most of the time, but we adjust it, and then we schedule later, and then we follow up. And we can kind of chase it down through the pregnancy if we need to. As it progresses through pregnancy, generally speaking, more women will come in second, maybe third trimester with pubic bone pain. And usually they'll wait like 4 or 6 weeks. Yeah, I've had this for like 4 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever. And a lot of times we just can take it away right away. If it's not remedied, though, if we're not able to, if they don't come in or whatever, then the natural history is what it's called, basically, of pubic bone pain, or SPD, is that it will go up until labor and delivery, and generally speaking, it will stop. But I've had a lot of women come in with problems even after their pregnancy with SPD, and they are harder to fix. Like, it doesn't go away nearly as quickly. We always are able to get a result for the most part, but it's a much more difficult thing if you wait until after the pregnancy is finished. I'm not exactly sure why that is, but that's been my experience with it. So what we want to do is we want to check it and get it adjusted. Now, this is actually technically not part of a Webster protocol. Maybe I'll do sometime a podcast specifically on Webster. But Webster basically is checking the tailbone. It's checking the function of the tailbone relative to the ischium and ilium. And so the sacrum and those sacroiliac joints that I showed you here. So here's the tailbone here. This is what we're focused on with Webster, because it'll clock up or clock down on one side or the other, and the hips will rotate forward or back on one side or the other. And that's really what we're able to do to get rid of a lot of the pain in the back. But really what we're trying to do is improve the functionality of the pelvis to make sure it's functioning properly leading up to labor and delivery. This was also taught at Webster, though, and so docs who've been to the Webster seminar and who are certified in Webster have seen this because they always teach it. So pubic symphysis is really interesting. What will happen is that since it's two bones, as the pelvis shifts forward and back, in the back, obviously the front's got to shift too a little bit at some point. So if these bones come together like this, it'll shift up on one side and then lock, and that asymmetry there will create all kinds of problems for some women. Not every woman, but the women who come in, this is what we check. Now, the way we check it on the table, the adjusting table, is you lie down on your back, and I actually check your leg length, because as the pelvis rotates back on one side, it pulls that leg short. And so we check that, and the way we challenge it, because again, the adductor muscles are attached to that pubic bone and into the disc, we challenge it, and it'll pull whichever way it's already biased towards. If it's already dysfunctioning, it'll make it go towards that dysfunction. It'll pull that leg short. And so we check it by checking the leg length, and then the way that I treat it, I should have grabbed my little adjusting tool. I've got a little adjusting tool. A lot of people have seen it's called, some people call it an activator. Mine's not an activator brand, but it's kind of the same thing. It's an adjusting tool. It's a little clicker. We find the pubic bone, and then all we do is we find that high side, and we just go click, click on that high side, and we check it again. And almost every time I adjust it once or maybe twice in the same adjustment treatment, and the pubic bone pain will be gone. Not forever, but it'll almost always completely eliminate the pain or reduce it by about 90%. So it's really a fascinating thing to do as a chiropractor, because it's weird. It's not like I'm resetting a joint like in the spine or an elbow or a shoulder like that, where I can hear pop, reset, we know that it's moved. We just move it, we check it. If it's lined up, hey, it's done. And then pull the woman up, stand up, walk around the table, make sure that everything is feeling better. And so it's a really fun thing for me to be able to do, because nobody knows this, and it's so easy and it's so fast. And women suffer, and they have to be on bed rest for like months just because their pubic bone is killing them when they get up and they walk around and go to the bathroom or try to pick up their kids. And I'll have women come in absolutely in tears and frustrated by this, or I'll have them call and say, do you work on SPD? Yes, please come in and let me adjust you so we can get this thing going right away, and we can do our very best for you. It's really important that the pregnancy is comfortable for mom, and that things are functioning properly, because we want you as stressed out as little as possible during pregnancy. And then we want to expedite labor and delivery when the time is appropriate. And that means the pelvis has to be mobile and has to be moving properly. And you have to have confidence in going into labor and delivery, whether you're on your back in a hospital bed or whether you're up and about doing an unmedicated birth. We want to have lots of confidence that your body is functioning the way it's designed to, and not in tons of pain, because that's just going to stress everybody out. Okay, now there are some other causes of pubic bone pain that are not SPD. We can have things like, let's see, round ligament pain, and that's a really interesting one too. Round ligaments are really cool. Hey, I actually just did a blog post on my website. If you look up timpychiropractic.com, go to blogs, and you should be able to find that relatively easy. This is man, I think I posted it just a couple of days ago. So look at whatever date I posted this video, and then go to about that timeline in the blogs. But round ligaments really interesting because you have the uterus, and I don't have a model of a uterus here, but you have the uterus, and from the top of the uterus, the ligaments come out to the sides. And if the uterus is in the pelvis, they actually come down to the pubic bone on each side. So one here and then the other on the other side. And they go through something called the inguinal ligament or inguinal canal. I'm sorry, the inguinal canal. And then they go down through the pelvis and they actually attach to the inside of the outer labia in the vagina. And so round ligaments actually attach there. Now, in a non-pregnant woman, the round ligament is about 4 inches long total because the uterus is just like right here, and so it goes down through here and then attaches to the inside of the labia majora. And so as the uterus grows, of course, it starts extending upwards out of the pelvis, and so the round ligaments get really thick and they get really long. But the reason that they're there is to stabilize the uterus so it's not flopping one way or the other way. And so that's why women will have pain, round ligament pain in the abdomen. So this is where we find it most often, right above the pubic bone. We just trace it right up there, and we put pressure on it. I'll talk about treatment of that in just a second. They can actually feel a pulling in their vagina, like a sharp pulling or dull or maybe even achy. A lot of times that's round ligament pain. And the way that it works, round ligament is really cool because it's one of the very few ligaments in the body that actually has muscle tissue or contractile tissue in it. And so it can actually pull on one side to stabilize everything. It's really, really cool. Really great design. Since it has contractile or muscle tissue inside of it, then it'll get trigger points. And those little trigger points can just be super sore. And so what we do for that is we just kind of put a thumb on it, and it's tender there while I'm pushing, and then over the course of usually about 20 to 60 seconds or so, it'll melt. I'll just feel it go away, and then the pain's just going away. It makes a huge difference. And so there are techniques that I can actually show you how to do at home. You can do it morning and night or when you're lying in bed. It's just really an easy time to do it. That helps with round ligament pain too. But a lot of times SPD is confused for round ligament pain. They are usually fairly easy to discern, and so a lot of times if women will come in with one thing, they often have the other at the same time. So we just do both in the office. It just takes literally like 10 seconds to adjust a pubic symphysis, and then just a few, like a minute or so to work on round ligaments. And it makes a huge difference. Women will sit up and they'll feel like they can breathe again, and they'll feel like, yeah, all the pain is gone and I can get up and walk around much, much more easily. We can also have pain in the attachments to the adductor muscles, the ones I was telling you about in the inner thighs. Those can also be painful. And then we can have pain caused by the abdominal muscle, because like rectus abdominis. So the main ab muscle goes down, it attaches to that disc, that fibrocartilage disc in there. And so that can actually cause pain as well. And so if you get a muscle pull low in the abs, that can also feel like SPD. So what we want to avoid when you have SPD, of course, you can get this on any website. So this is not news necessarily. Getting in and out of a car, turning over in bed, walking up and down stairs, lifting or carrying things. The advice that I give women with any sort of pubic symphysis problems is leave your legs together when you're moving, especially when you're turning. Like to get in and out of a car, put your knees together, and then everything swings over at once, so you're not reaching, the left leg out. If you're getting out of the driver's side, left leg out first and following it with the right leg, because that pulls on everything and that's going to irritate that. So when you're on your way to my office to get adjusted and get that thing fixed, that's the way you want to keep it. And then after we adjust it, we want it to hold. We don't want to immediately pull it right back out, because if the body already has pre-existing conditions that cause that in the first place, chasing those things down takes more than just one adjustment. And so it's going to have a tendency to pull itself out. And so we check it. And the frequency on that, oh man, I wish that I could just cleanly answer that really easily. Some women I have to adjust 3 times a week. Some women I have to adjust twice a week. Some women once a week. Some women every couple of weeks. Some women every month through their pregnancy. So it's so different. It just depends on who you are and exactly what's going on. Okay, so the main takeaways here are a lot of times medical professionals, like I talked about before on the websites and things, they don't even know that SPD can be treated by a chiropractor. But absolutely it can most of the time. And like I said, there's a little bit of differences in cause, but most of the time we get in, we start working on that thing, and that pain is going to start going away dramatically and immediately. So it's really, really fun to be able to work with women with this. I hate to see women come in bad shape, but it's really nice to see them leave smiling because they got a good result out of the adjustment. I've adjusted two this morning. It's just really common, even when it's not hurting, especially women who are prepping for labor and delivery and last like 4 or 6 weeks of care before their baby comes. I'll always check pubic symphysis, make sure it's working right, at least in the right position. And then sometimes they'll sit up and say, "Oh, I didn't even realize that was a problem, and now I feel better." Or if things are just nagging on those SI joints in the back, then yeah, we'll check the pubic symphysis. And so it's really important to make sure that the bases are covered as far as that goes, because when baby comes and labor starts, we want to be sure the pelvis is able to open, is not all jammed up out of place, and is not going to be hugely uncomfortable for mom when that happens. If you have a medical professional that you are working with that does not know that this can be treated by a chiropractor, let them know. Have them call my office. I never get calls from from OBs. A lot of times they're like, yeah, I already know everything about this, but it really can make a huge difference. And so if there are other moms, if you've experienced this before, and other moms that you know how much pain they're in, send them to a chiropractor, whether it's me or whether it's somebody else. If they're Webster certified, they know this adjustment, and it's really easy and it's really fast to do. Okay, I think that's everything that I have on this topic today. There stimulated a couple more ideas of things that we're gonna talk about in the future. If you have any ideas or if you have any questions about this or anything else to do with chiropractic and pregnancy or chiropractic and pediatrics or just general chiropractic, please reach out. We're super easy to get a hold of. The number for the main office is 801-762-6940. The front desk email is timpviewreception@gmail.com. My email is drspencererickson@gmail.com if you need to get a hold of me. If you have any questions, we'd love to hear from you. If you're having these issues, then come in and let us work with you. We will get this stuff taken care of. It makes a huge difference. I want you sleeping well at night. We want to prep you for labor and delivery. We want you able to do everything you need to do during the day. So hope you have a great day. Thanks for watching, and we will see you again soon. Thanks.